film sucks. Indie film sucks. It's the Indie Film Sucks podcast. Yeah.
Coming at you from the mean streets of St. Louis, from a basement on South Broadway, the Indie Film Sucks podcast. Because indie film, well, it's terrible, but that's why we're here. Anyway, this is the Indie Film Sucks podcast. What do we do here? We talk about the highs, the lows,
and the
in-betweens.
Yeah. So we're 58 in. We should know this by
I know. True independent filmmaking. I'm Chris Grega.
I'm Brock Roberts, and we have a few guests here.
We do, because Chris Mackey is on assignment.
Yeah. So go ahead, Chris Grega. Let's figure out what we got going on here.
Tonight we have Kurt Aubuchon and Harry Kolmer.
Hi.
Yeah.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Welcome to the Indie Film Sucks podcast.
So, normally Mackie would ask this question, but I'm going to go ahead and ask. Hopefully you've put a lot of deep thought into this. But what is your suck?
You want to go first or should I?
Yeah, I guess I'll go first. I guess my main suck is that I don't know what I'm doing, and so
Welcome to the club.
decided that it would be fun to make a feature film and a period piece, Western. Turns out they're pretty expensive, so the fundraising is the part that sucks. I really enjoy the creative part, but the fundraising, trying to figure out how to market the perks and the Indiegogo and all of that has it's been a challenge, and at least so far that's my least favorite part of the process. So.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that part either.
How about you, buddy?
Well, I mean, obviously that as well. Like that, I can't say not that, but really it's just the sheer amount of time that goes into you would think, yeah, a lot of time goes into making a movie. Mm-hmm. But so much time goes into just talking about making a movie. Like, even just talking about making a movie takes time.
Yes.
Like trying to get people together to talk about making a movie takes time. To balance your life, because a lot of indie filmmakers, I don't do this all day every day. I have a day job, and to balance my job, like romantic stuff in my life, and then
Romantic
also,
stuff? What's that?
I know, right? It's so hard to have the time to do all of this at once, and then I'll be at someone's graduation party, and I'm on my phone the entire time because I have a meeting because we're launching crowdfunding like the next day or like that kind of thing.
Yeah, and the time it is a huge time suck. So I have been acting for a while. I directed and produced a short film last year, and that in no way prepared me to produce a feature film. Just the amount of time was just order of magnitude more. I have a day job, I have a family and kids and all that, and it's tough. So
I'm going to tell you how stupid I was when I made my first feature film. I still am. Don't get me wrong. I'm still a complete idiot. But this was 2001. So I became a filmmaker in 1999. And I'm not going to go into the whole long, sad story how that happened. It's a long, sad story. No bullshit. But anyway, I made 3 short films. And I thought, okay, now I've made these 3 shorts. That's enough knowledge to make a feature film. Because I didn't go to film school. I didn't have any of that background. I started filmmaking, I hit the ground running, and when I started, the only thing I knew about filmmaking was action meant go, cut meant stop, and you have to keep track of the number of takes because the editor might need to know that. That's about all I knew. So I thought, oh yeah, three shorts, we can make a feature. I was wrong.
Well, ignorance can be bliss when it comes to this. Not just this, but in any business, because it's super hard. Like, you're getting ready to learn. You're learning already how hard it is to make a feature. If you knew how hard it really was, you may not ever fucking do it.
Yep.
Same with owning a business like I do. It's hard to keep things rolling and keep the lights on. And if you knew that going into it, all the hard work you have to do to it, man, you may not ever do it. So I'm glad you're doing it, though.
No, thanks. Yeah, I am. So I've been acting for a while, about 5 years, and And I wrote the script for this movie, Down the Long River, and I didn't really want to direct it or produce it or anything. I just wanted to write it and act in it. And I couldn't really get anyone who was interested in producing it because everyone wants to do their own stuff, or they just sort of weren't feeling it or whatever. So I'm like, oh, well, I'll produce it. And had I known how difficult it would be, I probably would not have done that. But, now it's happening. So, yeah.
You got the train moving.
That's right.
Okay, so you started late in life
Yep.
as an actor. How did that happen?
So along about 2018, and not really a sad story, but I'll try not to make it draw it out too much. About 2018, I was, just kind of, I felt like I was kind of in a rut in life and kind of wanted to do something other than what I was doing, or I guess in addition to. I guess it was kind of a midlife crisis. And I already had the convertible, so I didn't want to have an affair. So I needed some other kind of hobby from a midlife crisis, and I thought, well, I'll start acting. And so I started acting just kind of on a whim. I'd always had kind of a passing interest in acting, but never really did anything with it. So I just started acting and ended up doing like a lot of student films. I have sort of become one of the go-to middle-aged guys for the Webster students, things like that. So yeah, I just enjoyed doing it, and last year decided I wanted to try to, make my own stuff. So wrote and directed a short film, which Harry was in.
And what was that called, the short?
It's called The Quarry. It's in editing right now, so hopefully it'll come out fairly soon. Our editor, who is awesome, he's a great editor, great special effects guy, kind of had some life things come up, so we're a little later than I would hope for, but that should be coming out pretty soon.
And you shot that in the Valmeyer Mines, right?
I did, yeah. Yep. It's really cool. The location's awesome, and we have all kinds of really cool stuff, and it's, this kind of, I also am one of the actors in it, the co-star, Mariana Garcia, and I chase a monster through the Valmeyer Quarry. And the monster's played by Adam Flowers. So, and he breathes fire at us, and there's all kinds of cool stuff.
It's a really impressive monster. Like if I could say, like I know that people haven't seen it yet, but it's one of those things where to talk about. I mean, this is jumping ahead, but when Kurt approaches me about doing this Western, when you see what this monster looks like, you can understand why. Like, you're ready to buy in on, when Kurt says, I'm going to do a thing, you're like, oh, you're going to do the thing. I've seen what you're going to do. And it's going to, what this thing looks like is really going to blow people away. So I can't wait for people to see The Quarry. And I wasn't actually in the mine. I shot in a lovely little cigar shop, so I didn't get all dusty. I have seen what the monster looks like, and it's pretty astounding. And then we have that same makeup artist working on our film currently, Hannah Elizabeth Richard.
Okay.
Yep. And she's awesome. I met her on the set of James Dean's films. I've been in several of James Dean's projects. And Hannah did makeup and practical effects on those. So, she just, the monster in The Quarry, she just killed it. It's just, I wasn't really sure how it was going to turn out. And Hannah's like, oh, yeah, I can do a monster. I'm like, okay, let's. And then I was just blown away. It was awesome.
I used to sneak into that quarry when I was a kid.
Oh, really?
And so I'm very familiar with it, and I was like, man, how did that son of a bitch get to shoot in the Valmeyer Mines? Man.
Yeah, I just emailed him.
How did you do that?
Yeah, I just emailed him, and I think it took 1 or 2 emails before they responded, and then the guy was like, oh yeah, sure, just come on over.
That's the story of this movie in so many ways of the locations that we found, and even Matt Cardona getting involved. It's just people will say, how do you do that? And it's like, well, I just emailed them. Just take the shot.
So Harry, you're the director of the film, correct?
Yes, correct.
And you were a wrestler, professional wrestler, or?
Yeah, for a time. Yeah, that's certainly correct.
So how did you go from being a wrestler to a film director?
Well, so it was sort of I was always wanting to make film, and then I made all kinds of short films in high school, and when I got out of high school, was making stuff, as much as I could. And then at a certain point, my ambitions got beyond when I say what I could afford, I mean with absolutely no money at all. So then I was like, well, I got to get a job, and so I have to start working. And so then I started working, and then just the woes of moving out for the first time, getting your own place, all of that. And then through all that process, I had a talent agent briefly that went absolutely nowhere. I did one Campbell's Soup voiceover commercial, and that was like all I got. And I was like, man, this stinks. I have a great talent agent now. Talent management, just their show. Yeah, she's wonderful. Shout out to them. They're awesome. But previous unnamed agency was not so great. I weirdly wasn't into wrestling as a kid. Most people's story is that they're really into wrestling as a child, and then they in high school become disillusioned with it. I was really into movies as a child, and my entire life, and still am. And then I always thought wrestling was trying to fool me. I had this like perception because it was the way that other kids talked about it that like believed in wholeheartedly that it was real, and they would like throw it in my face, and I was like, surely no, this is like this is what it is, right? And then I never really watched it and never really gave it a chance. And then I had a friend in high school that came over. We were doing a play together, and he came over afterwards, and he was like, it was a Friday, and he asked, do you care if I throw on Friday Night SmackDown? And I was like, sure, dude, I don't care. Like we were all hanging out doing other stuff. And I was watching it, and Cody Rhodes, current WWE champion, then he was just a guy, and he had this thing called, he was dashing Cody Rhodes. He had this thing called grooming tips. And he was showing you how to floss, because he was handsome, and he wanted to show all the unwashed masses of wrestling fans how to be dashing like him. And I watched that, and I went, oh, I get what this is now. Like, I just suddenly, it all clicked into place, and I went, this isn't trying, they're not trying to tell me that this man is a competitive, like, athlete in the same way that, like, Mike Tyson is, even though Mike Tyson has fought at WrestleMania. So maybe he is in the exact same way.
Maybe.
I suddenly, all of it clicked into place, and I understood that this was a marriage of, like, all the stuff I like comic books, filmmaking, and, like, theater, like, live theater, and, like, improvisation. And so I was very interested in it from, like, 16 on. And so then I'm living by myself, and I'm, struggling to act, and I am thinking, I'm 6'4", I weigh 200 plus pounds. I have an acting background. I have like a performing in front of live people background. Like, if I don't give this a shot, then I will regret it for the rest of my life. Like, if I don't give this a shot while I'm like young and able to do this, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. So I went, and it was like deposit, because it was like, I think $500 total, and then maybe $250 deposit or something like that. So I spent the money thinking I might take one bump. That's like getting thrown on the ground. I was like, I might take one bump and turn around and walk out of here and go, I can't do it. I'm not tough enough to do this. But I tried, and I was like, we'll see. And then I did it one time, and I was like, oh, I'm fine. Like, I easily can do this. And then the reason I stepped away from wrestling eventually was partly the pandemic. Like, it was very hard. And then even when wrestling shows started back up, the undercard guys, it was very hard to conceive how you're going to get on the show, because everyone that's on those shows now is so closely vetted to make sure that no one's passing stuff to each other.
Sure.
I somehow was surprised to learn that people who are throwing themselves at the ground and hitting each other for other people's affection and attention were a bit dramatic, and that crowd of people is a bit dramatic. And it's the same thing in indie film, it's the same thing in theater. Like, you're gonna run into like all kinds of drama and stuff.
Yeah.
But it was and this is not, I'm not speaking to professional wrestling as a whole. I'm speaking to my specific experience and the people
Sure.
I specifically was interacting with. But it was just getting daunting to me. And the idea of going and interacting with some of these people over and over again. And so I just had to like step away from that, and then upon stepping away from that, I stepped back into doing 48-hour film festival, like doing that, getting back on stage in theater, getting a new agent, getting new representation, doing student films, doing when On Fire came in. Doing that, and then really being an extra on that for a whole day. We're in Chaffetz Arena, and they turned that into like a big Vegas arena.
Oh, did they?
And then they also turned a hallway in that into a prison, and they turned the gym in that into like a gym in an entirely different place. So
Movie magic.
Chaffetz Arena is going to be in 3 entirely different parts of that movie as 3 entirely different locations.
Sure.
That's what you do.
Yeah, and it's like, so I'm sitting there, and especially on that set, obviously, because it's at such a high budget level, but on any set, and I'm just taking, that's why I've taken so many, opportunities that like don't provide for my wallet or my bank account as much as I would want, because I can sit there and I can learn and I can study on set. And it's like, that's a way, you're talking about like not knowing anything other than action means go. being on set is such an invaluable way of learning all of that. And then being on set at different production levels and seeing like, okay, I see the difference here.
Oh, yeah.
Like I see the difference of what these people aren't doing. And then sometimes it's not in any disparaging way to say someone's not doing something, but just at our budget level, you can't, not our budget level specifically, but the budget level that I think we're all working in, it's not going to look the same as if you're on, like $100 million movie. Like it's gonna feel like a whole, night and day.
Yeah. No, that's what I tell a lot of people. Our competition at this level is not Hollywood. It can't be, right? Our competition, honestly, this is going to sound really cheesy, but our competition is ourself, right? Because we made a World War II feature film. Took us 3 years. It's called Rhineland. I've said this many times. It's really, really good for what it is. If you compare it to Band of Brothers, it's a piece of shit.
Right.
Because you can't take, and it was a $35,000 World War II feature, which was insanity itself, making it for that kind of money. But you can't compare that to a $300 million epic, right? You just can't, and you can't beat yourself up over it either.
Right. Yeah.
And with the Western that we're doing, I kind of envision it as kind of like a spaghetti Western. So, I kind of want to lean into that low budget, I want it to look and feel like a 70s B movie, right? Which is, and even that may be a little bit ambitious. But yeah, I mean, it's not going to be, Unforgiven, right?
Sure.
Or Three to the Humor, right?
Or like even something like Westworld, like, what someone may expect of, like, I'm sure that anyone could get excited about, like, thinking about, oh, we're doing a Western, and then have that envisioned in their head. And it's funny that you bring that up, because James Dean, our producer, just shared this with us recently. It was a message. I think it was a message he got privately. It might have been a public comment he got, but it said, "Is this gonna look like a Western, or is this gonna look like an indie film pretending to be a Western?" And it's like, what is the difference to you?
What a dick question. Speaking of the Western, what's the name of this movie you're talking about?
It's Down the Long River.
Down the Long River.
And so it kind of centers around this kind of forgotten river town on the Missouri River. And so it takes place in Missouri in 1879. So it's still kind of the aftermath of the Civil War. The main character is this traumatized former surgeon in the Army. He was an Army surgeon during the Civil War. And he falls in with this outlaw gang. They wind up in this river town, and so there's this kind of sneaky, duplicitous Pinkerton agent that they run across, and so you have the outlaw gang and the doctor, the former doctor, and the Pinkerton agent, and there's like revenge at play, and then they're waiting for this riverboat to come down the river that may or may not have a fortune in gold that it's transporting down the river. And it's just in this kind of decrepit, river town that's dealing with the yellow fever pandemic, because yellow fever was a thing around that time.
Okay.
And so it's going to look sort of decrepit and look dirty and look grimy, which is, again, I've kind of been watching a lot of the old spaghetti Westerns, and they're dirty and they're sweaty, and it's just the awesome look and feel of just kind of decaying grime. So that's kind of what we're going for with the movie. And it's going to look like a Western, right? It's going to look...
Well, that's the thing about spaghetti Westerns you bring up. Those were B pictures. Mm-hmm. Those were not A films, right? Those were not... Because, John Wayne was like the A-list Western. And, there's some really great... I really like John Wayne's older work. Like his latter films, I think are much better than his earlier films. But the spaghetti Westerns, you're right. Those were B movies. Right. And people tend to forget that. And there's a lot more than just, Sergio Leone films. Right. But those are the big ones. Mm. I mean, one of my favorite movies of all time is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Mm-hmm. And it's a B picture. Yeah. But there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's still an awesome movie.
Yeah, they would shoot some of those movies, like, they'd be shooting multiple scenes for multiple movies in a day.
Yeah.
Where they would just go, okay, now you're going to go over here, now you're this guy, and you're hunting this other guy for this other different reason. Go. And then they shoot it, and it's like, yeah, it was not it didn't have the sheen and gloss of like, you know, a fancy.
They didn't have the money.
Yeah, they simply didn't, and that's part of why they shot them in Italy in the first place.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
They had like the towns happened to be there or whatever, and you know, one of the things that I want to make a little bit different about this movie is that, you know, a lot of the 60s and 70s westerns, almost all of them were very western, right? They're very brown and dusty and sandy, and you're in the desert, and so I wanted something that is a little bit different setting, you know. So this is going to take place. We have this little town that we're going to use in Missouri, and it's surrounded by trees, and it's green, but it's also at the same time still kind of like decrepit and falling apart.
So no tumbleweed.
No tumbleweeds.
No, damn.
No, more like just like thick vines, like encompassing stuff.
Briars,
Like, yeah, it's like a different kind of. It's gonna still have all the hallmark feel of what a western feels like. One of my favorite westerns, if not my favorite western, is The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. Again, a movie I don't want to necessarily like directly compare this to, because that's an expensive movie.
It is.
But something in that film that I'm inspired by is how it doesn't have the same dusty orange palette, and it does sometimes with like the waving cornfields and grain and whatnot. But a lot of times they're in the woods, and like the woods aren't brown and dirty, and like a lot of the westward expansion and like what we think of as like the classic old west tales like Jesse James, they weren't taking place in sandy desert towns.
No.
They were taking place in like
Midwest.
forest towns like this, river towns like this.
Have you ever heard of or seen the film called The Long Riders?
I've heard of it. I haven't yet watched
I
it.
have
though.
not.
It's by Walter Hill. Walter Hill, hands down, one of my favorite directors. Most people don't know who Walter Hill is, but he did The Long Riders, he did Southern Comfort, he did The Warriors, he did 48 Hours, he did Streets of Fire. He's a great sort of contemporary, although not as successful as John Carpenter. Anyway, The Long Riders, it's cool for a number of reasons. It's about the James and the Younger gangs, and almost everyone in the film is a brother playing a brother.
Oh, I've heard about this film for this reason.
So James and Stacy Keach are Frank and Jesse James. All the Carradines are the Youngers. Dennis and Randy Quaid are, I can't remember who they play. But anyway, it's also Christopher Guest, Nicholas Guest are Bob and Charlie Ford.
Oh, wow.
So it's a great movie, and it really nails that palette that you're talking about, because it takes place mostly in Missouri, and I think in Minnesota at the end, and it's a really great, it's a great Western. It's a great film.
Yeah, I've heard of it, and it's kind of on my to watch list, but I have not got around to it yet. So.
Yeah, you should check that one out.
No, absolutely, I'll jump on that, because that's exactly the kind of thing that I want to look to for inspiration. And then something else that we thought of taking inspiration from that isn't necessarily something that would jump to someone's mind, but it's something that our director of photography and I have talked about a lot. And of course, again, we evoke all these expensive things, but like that's the dream, though. That's what you want to like. I think if you have like a North Star in mind, you end up in a good place.
Sure.
But is The Last of Us on HBO and the video game itself?
Yep.
Because that's something else where it's green and like it's Earth overtaking and like taking this place back, and kind of like what, you know, these people that are kind of like stranded and in this battle of maybe they shouldn't be in this place anymore. In The Last of Us, there's a mushroom zombie thing that is taking the world. But then also in times of like after the Civil War, when all these people are forgotten, like all these people in this town have lost people. They've all been like affected by this violence, and then they're just kind of left to deal with it, with like half their people gone, and then people are getting sick. So it's the same kind of, it's leaving. Not only visually is it the palette that we want, but it's also kind of the same desperate place that a lot of these characters are in.
So how far along are you guys in the process?
We have like so much of the film cast. We have a really amazing cast assembled. We have a lot of locations secured, a lot of like the weapons made. We have like these crazy bespoke weapons. His character's shotgun is this crazy revolving barrel shotgun. It's unlike, it's a real thing that existed, but it's like those classic things where they had that gun that shot out in like 6 directions at once, like in like pirate times, where like humans experimented with weird stuff with weapons across time. And we have some of that stuff in here. We have like this huge cornucopia of weapons, and we have so many of them already assembled by custom prop makers or like secured through like replica companies, because they're all non-firing replicas, but they all function. You can pull the trigger, the hammer moves, but they have no capacity to shoot a bullet or potentially harm anyone. So we have all of that. We have these custom. He's at like a war club that Kurt has made. So along with writing the film and producing the film, he's also like a carpenter. He made a cannon. Oh, damn. So there's a staggering amount of stuff that we have. We have a riverboat, which is super exciting, and that's something that was about an hour plus of my night last night on the phone with the DP of just talking about this boat and then picturing, okay, so this has to happen on the boat. Can we move the camera through here? Where do we need to be? Do we need another boat to look at the boat?
Are you guys going to dress the boat to make it look period, or are you just going to kind of roll with it?
Well, it's already pretty close to period. It's a paddle wheeler, right? It really is a stern wheeler. And the cabin and everything looks pretty period. One thing we'll have to probably dress a little bit is the deck of the boat is metal. So we might see if we can put down something to make it wood. Other than that, we don't have to dress it because it's a real live.
Yeah, it's like a pretty it's. Just because paddle boats aren't really, something we're not. I don't know that we continued modernizing them past a certain point. Like, I think we, as a people, lost interest in the paddle boat to some degree. So you
can only upgrade so much. That's what you're saying.
So it is pretty period accurate, and I think that there's so much, especially this town that we have. It's this like a real tiny town. Well, I say real. No one ever lived in it as a functional place as a residence. Yeah. But it's all these buildings, and it's the cliche thing to say about New York. They're like, it's a character in the film itself. But this place actually is kind of going to be, because it's the biggest gift we could have been given for this to found this place.
Most good movies. Most good movies. The surrounding is a character. It has to be. It makes your movie real when the surroundings is actually real.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we use the word gift a little bit loosely because they are charging us for it, but it's pretty reasonable, right? We're getting it for a pretty good deal. But yeah, so it's this town in Warsaw, Missouri, which is kind of southwest Missouri, 20 or 30 minutes south of Sedalia. And this guy bought this property like back in the 70s, or 60s or 70s, and there happened to be these two old period cabins that were really there from like the 1800s. And this guy just, for the heck of it, built up a bunch of buildings around these cabins, and there's a town there. There's there's the saloon and the general store and the
blacksmith shop.
The blacksmith shop.
There's a blacksmith shop.
And the jail, sheriff's office and jail, and the post office.
The tombstone right there.
And a functioning, like an actual mill. That's the thing that like blows my mind about this place not having been like an operating town, is that there's a mill and like a bunch of equipment that like I would have no idea how to use.
The big steam engine with the conveyor belt, the whole 9 yards.
No kidding. Fantastic find.
Yeah. That's the thing you find in I would say Missouri, but I'd say the Midwest, is you can find a lot of things like that for little or no money. Yeah. And you can't get that everywhere. You can't get that in the coasts.
No,
that doesn't happen.
They'd be charging a fortune.
Yes, you have to build it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and so when I wrote the script, and then I was kind of had in mind some areas around the St. Louis area that we could use. I'm like, okay, well, we can shoot part of it at the historic village in Faust Park, and part of it over here, and part of it over here, and like some of those places, they only let you to shoot if it's like a educational film, and they have these restrictions and it's expense. And then we stumbled across this town, and again, I just emailed them. I'm like, hey, I looked up on the tax records who owned that piece of property, and I kind of tracked them down and emailed them like, hey, can we shoot a movie there? And they're very accommodating. Oh yeah, we'd love to have you there. In fact, we plan to list this with the film office and have more movies shoot here. So we're going to be the first movie shoot there.
And, get in there before everyone else does.
Yeah, you may see this place popping up and stuff later, but we will be the first ones to have ever been there.
I mean, as good as the film office may be, I have found it doesn't do a whole lot of favors for micro-budget indies. Right. Just like the tax credit. I think it's great the tax credit's back in Missouri, but that doesn't help people in the micro-budget boat. I found.
Yeah, you have to you have to have all the accountants and everything, and you have to spend money to get it.
Correct.
And then
You have to spend a minimum amount of money for it to even be considered.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
and at our level, it's I think that's kind of a wash,
Yes, very much.
Plus all the administrative overhead of the hassle of doing that all, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's spending money.
I think they are trying to figure things out, from what I understand.
I mean, I hope so.
Yeah.
Because in the past, I mean, and again, I'm not trying to be negative against the Missouri Film Office or any of that, but I know when I first started out, this is 25 years ago, they're like, yeah, good luck. They had absolutely nothing to offer a micro-budget filmmaker. And I would like there to be programs for people who are either just starting out or don't have tons of resources, where it's not, well, yeah, you can come play with our toys or you can come use our resources if you have $500,000.
Right.
If you don't, well, too bad.
Yeah.
This is a whole other conversation.
Yeah, it is. It is.
That's a whole
I don't want to go down that path.
Yeah.
But anyway, point is, sounds like you guys are really chugging along here.
Yeah, so we've got a lot of the pieces in place. A lot of the sort of planning is pretty far along. We have to do the scheduling and all that.
I almost said that was my suck. I'm just about the scheduling.
Yeah,
we had a whole scheduling nightmare recently. I think just better for everyone to not go into details specific. But it was just there was just an actor almost that had just inconsolable dates, just where it just purely wouldn't work. And we have a film where, oh man, our cast is over 30 people now,
yeah, right.
and so it's a nightmare to try to get 30 people available
Yes.
at the same time.
Yes.
Not that I hope that we did ever need all 30 people on the same day, but it's so tough. And there was just a scenario this past week where it was just actually losing sleep thinking about how are we going to solve this?
Right.
Do we need to split this character into two different characters?
Oh, yeah.
And then that's going back and writing, and then floating that idea, and then our DP has the very helpful notion of well, then what if maybe one of those characters is good then? But now we have one really good character right now. And then but it's do we we don't want to recast any part because we have all these amazing actors, and they're all
And they're the people we want for the part, right? They're not just that they're the body. It's the people that we know can do this part.
Yeah,
right?
there are very few people in this cast that had to really fight and audition for their part because they were who we wanted. They were either who he wrote the script with them in mind, or when I read the script, I thought, oh, I know the person for this. Let's try to get them, and let's have them read, and let's hear it, and let's see what we think. Every single person that's in the movie is exactly who we wanted for the part. There's never been a scenario where we were compromising. So scheduling is it's terrifying, because when you're thinking about that, oh no, what if we can't get this to work?
When do you guys plan to shoot?
So we're going to start shooting the last weekend, or actually
Second to last weekend.
second to last, July 20th. We're going to start shooting that weekend, and then the following weekend, and then we've got about a week and a half straight in Warsaw, and then we're back in St. Louis at private property of someone I know for the next several weekends. So we've got about 20 shoot dates. So it'll be from second to last weekend in July through about the end of September.
That's pretty aggressive shoot dates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We know. Yeah, we shot ours, 16 days?
The last feature was.
And it wasn't a Western.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
that's Red Night at Skies.
Red Night at Skies,
You
yeah.
shot that in 16 days?
Yeah.
That's very impressive that you shot that in 16 days.
Have you had a chance to see it?
I only the trailer. I wanted to go to the premiere, but then I had something else to do.
It's coming up at Hysteria Fest.
I know that I literally just saw that. This is so funny, but I just marked myself as going to that on Facebook today because I was like, oh, cool, I can see it in the theater because I missed the first chance to do it. So I was like, okay, this is awesome. I get a chance to go.
Yeah, scheduling was a bitch. There were, and that's every movie. There's always been some sort of ordeal where everything is locked, everything is hitting on all cylinders, and then someone's like, oh, I have to suddenly work this weekend, or oh, I got to go to my cousin's wedding, or whatever it is.
Right.
And it's like you have to do abstract math to figure out. I shit you not. There was this This is on my first feature, and we had to do this pickup scene. It was like just 4 characters. It was the 4 main characters in the movie going to this bar, right? But then all these people had to drop out because of whatever they couldn't make that night, and so we had like the sound guy wearing like the costume of one guy, and we're like trying all this stuff to make this work, and then finally it's like, okay, we have to reschedule because all of this shit that we're doing to try to make this one short scene work,
right?
It's not going to work.
Yeah,
right.
And yeah, I mean, you just hit the nail on the head. Scheduling, you just want to kill yourself, man.
Yeah, it's horrible.
And I've been like the problem on set sometimes, right? I did a feature where we were shooting at the U.S. Grand House, a historical site, and I took a couple days off work because they were shooting in the middle of the week, right? So I got my 2 days off work to go do my scene. Well, we got rained out, right? We couldn't shoot the scene on those 2 days, and the director's like, "Well, can you come back tomorrow?" Like, well, no, I have work tomorrow, right? It's like a Thursday. I gotta go to work. Yeah. And then I think he's real mad at me. But I mean, it's like it's indie film, right? We all have our jobs and our lives, whatever.
Oh yeah. Let me ask you this: has your perspective changed somewhat going from just acting to producing?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I think you as an actor, you spend most of the time on set just sitting around, right?
Yes.
So I thought, okay, well, I'm watching what's going on. I'm watching the hair and makeup person. I'm watching the director. And then, okay, I kind of know what this is all about, right? And I did not kind of know what this was all about. So yeah, my perspective has changed a lot, and the scheduling and just the trying to sort of. I mean, as a producer, you're like a project manager, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think just understanding that to a degree that I didn't before.
Yeah, you wear a lot of hats on Indy. We've talked about this before. With the bigger budget ones, you say we can't ever make it look like a big Hollywood budget because they got one hat to wear.
Yeah.
And they're paid well doing it.
It's delegated. That person's handling that thing.
For indie film, I don't know how many hats we wear. It's just too many to count.
Right, yeah. Like if Kurt was properly credited for everything he's done for the movie, it would be like Kurt Aubuchon, Kurt Aubuchon, Kurt Aubuchon, right. Kurt Aubuchon. Like, and so just saying producer is sort of just like, yeah, this is encompassing all of like the behemoth work that you've done for this.
And that's when you can tell an indie film is not going to be good. And if you've done this, then I apologize. But when you see written by, directed by, makeup by, sound by, edited by, I'm like, dude, just make up some fake names.
Well, you talked about Carpenter. He actually did that on, I think it was, why am I blanking? The one with the church, the Prince of Darkness. Is that the name of the movie?
Oh, with Sam Neill. That the one?
That's in the Mouth of Madness. The Donald Pleasance one. I think it's called Prince of... I don't know. It's like a weird thing in a church, and there's green goo, and it's upside down. It's a really great movie. I'm selling it really well by not remembering the title.
Pretty sure I've seen it, but I vaguely remember
it. But in that film, and I think it was that one. I might be misattributing it, but because he would do the music for his own film and do all of it. He would edit his own film. He was just like, I don't like. Again, even though he's John Carpenter, he's made Halloween, he's made The Thing. Mm-hmm. He's like, I don't like how this looks. Yeah. Like this makes me feel weird and uncomfortable when I watch this in a theater full of people. So can we and then it's a bunch of fake names. Like the music is done by some fake name in that movie, and not John Carpenter, even though he did it. Just because he was like, I don't like this. Like I don't want to have my name just John Carpenter. John Carpenter.
Yeah, like a giant douchebag.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when his movies start being called like John Carpenter's apostrophe like this.
So now I can probably ask about this fundraising thing here. So I'm curious about it. How long is it going to be going on for one?
So probably at least about another month. So we initially said it's on Indiegogo.
Okay.
And if you go to downthelongriver.com, you'll get redirected to our Indiegogo. So again, that's downthelongriver.com. So we've been at it about 2 weeks of an initial 4-week campaign. We're going to extend it at least another 2 weeks. So we got about a month left to go at least. Like a lot of Indiegogos, you can get perks like being an associate producer or getting a special thanks on the credits and things like that. One of the perks that's all sold out that was a real stroke of genius, which I think was your idea.
Yeah. It was, but we don't need it.
Was we sold wanted posters. So that there are going to be wanted posters appearing in the movie.
I saw that one. But I was like, I don't want my face on a poster.
Yeah, so people, you pay X number of dollars and you get your face on a wanted
You
poster.
get your name and face in the movie.
Yeah, that's cool.
Or like a name of your choosing. Like it doesn't, you know,
Sure.
there were some people that were like, can it be like, you know, this instead of my legal name? And I was like, sure.
That's fun.
Yeah.
So we have some pretty inventive perks. Also, we mentioned some of the props and things. You can buy those, or we're going to sell those as like film use props.
Yeah, some of them I've already sold, but then like...
That's what I did. I did a prop.
Yeah.
So you bought one?
So I'm getting a pistol.
Awesome.
Oh, there you
Thanks.
go.
Yeah, thanks so much.
That's awesome. All of those are so cool. Like all the stuff, like if you look through it, it's so cool. And like their big shotgun, you know, that's up there. You know, and then if you're like a wrestling fan, the wrestling fans will buy like used gear from wrestlers. You know, we have Cardona's hat. We have the guns he's going to use in the movie. All that's on sale. The custom war club that I mentioned that Kurt made. That's I say on sale. It's not like it's a perk. Yeah, it's a perk. It's available for you to take home, and we will send it to you. The cannon that Kurt made is available for you to take home.
Yeah, so I have to kind of shout out to my son for the cannon. So the opening scene in the movie takes place in the Civil War, and it's this kind of eerie scene where Doc has just operated on a hapless soldier who actually is Harry. And by the way, the main character, kind of in true like spaghetti western fashion, he has just one name. He's just Doc. You never know his name. So Doc is operating on the soldier, and we wanted to sell this as a Civil War scene. Right, so we've got the uniform pants and whatever. I've got this sort of awful looking, field amputation saw, which I've just used to, hack off Harry's arm or whatever. But it's Civil War, you have to have a cannon, right?
Yeah.
And so I looked all over the place for some place where there was a cannon that we could shoot the scene in, right? And like, there's got to be some historical site with some old Civil War cannon out front that we can use.
And I reached out to all my cannon guys, and none of them had one.
I just could not find one, right? Could not find one that was going to be usable. Like there's some that are like on the steps of the courthouse. Well,
Sure.
That's not going to work, right? And so I'm like, what am I going to do with this? And my 13-year-old son was like, oh, well, make one out of a foam roller. I got a foam roller, it's yay big and, it's a big around, which happens to be about the same size as the smaller cannons. That's technically it's a howitzer, but good enough. So I used that, and I had a whole bunch of foam lying around, and so I built the cart part of the cannon out of a bunch of foam insulation.
Oh, sweet.
And bought 2 big wagon wheels. They're supposed to be decorative wagon wheels from like the farm and home store. And so now I've got this big foam cannon. And it looks pretty good.
It's crazy because like everyone that like even the people that were on set and even the people that knew Kurt made it were walking up to it and they're going, man, this thing's crazy. Like, how did you make this? And then like they'll see Kurt move it. He'll be like, hey, can we move? We're moving it for light or whatever. And then someone just picks it up with like one hand and moves it. And they're like, oh. Wait, what is that? Like, because you look at it and you're like, well, that's like a cannon. Like, maybe it's not metal, but it's like some kind
Should
of
be
like
heavy.
Yeah, that's like a big heavy cannon thing that looks like it could shoot a cannonball. And then you go and like touch it and you're like, wow. So it's been so impressive that he's been able to wear like again multiple hats and do that.
Yeah, so
I'm not gonna credit myself
refuse foam for the next big heavy prop I have to carry around the set for the day. One day I was carrying around a TIG welder.
Oh, yeah.
Oh man,
Those things are heavy.
Yeah. And you had a real
And,
one,
like,
right? So-
it's
a real one.
Yeah.
And we're gonna call you, and you can make it out of foam for us next time. We'll do that.
Yeah, I really enjoyed making that stuff, so maybe that'll be my next creative endeavor. And Harry mentioned a lot of the weapons. I didn't make most of them. I tried to make. Yeah, I wanted it to be a little bit more interesting than just everyone having identical
A 6-gun.
Colt Peacemaker, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
which would have been the easier choice because then everyone could literally have the same gun through movie magic.
Yeah,
we
you
only
just
need one
hand it
gun
over.
and
Right.
just pass it over.
Easy's not fun, though.
And so I kind of put some thought into, well, this character would carry this kind of gun, right? And I'm not really a gun guy. I kind of, I kind of enjoy reading about old guns or whatever, but I'm not very knowledgeable about it.
Yeah, with the specificity in the script, that's a shocking statement to hear him say for me. Because like everyone that's read this is like, wow, I can't believe that like you know so much about all these guns. Like everyone that knows guns has read the script and been like, wow, you know exactly that he would be carrying this. Like, how do you know that? And then to have you be like, oh yeah, I don't know guns.
Yeah, well, I mean, I did a little bit of research, very specific kinds of research, but So Harry mentioned the shotgun, the Doc carries. This was wasn't a very popular model, but it was a Colt shotgun they made in 1855. It's like the big upscale revolver. So it's got a revolving cylinder, just like a revolver does, that holds the shotgun shells. And then you pull the hammer back like a single action revolver, and it rotates the cylinder, so you don't have to pump it or whatever. And the gun's just huge, right? It's just like this cannon. The geniuses at Wolfgar Weapons and Props made one for us. They 3D printed it, and it looks beautiful. It's like perfect.
That's pretty cool. How'd you find them?
I've been following them on Facebook for a while.
Are they local?
They're in Indiana, I think. But they do tons of props like that, and they do a lot of like specialized props, and again, I mean, it was an investment,
Sure.
but I think it was worth it because it's gonna be really cool, and I've never seen a Western where someone carries a 1855 revolving shotgun, so
That's true.
Me either. I've seen lots of Westerns. Haven't seen that one.
No, I know.
and you can buy that prop, so
There's all kinds of stuff that he's put in the movie in that way, like specificity, and with stuff like that. And then when I've like seen these guns, where again I'm like thinking, I've never seen that. Like I guess maybe like the mare's leg, like that's also another one where I'm like I've never seen this little thing. It's like this really cool little shotgun. It's the classic kind of like, it almost looks like the predecessor to like the, Arnie sawed off like shotgun that you rack like that. But it's this little, I don't even know, is it a shotgun or
it's actually a rifle.
Okay.
And I don't know if those, that might be a bit of an anachronism, but it's kind of a callback to this TV show that Steve McQueen was in like the 50s, where he played a bounty hunter, and he carried a gun very much like that. But yeah, it's like basically it's the typical kind of Winchester lever action gun that's been sawed off. So it's got the butt stock is cut off of it and the barrel's cut off of it, so it's about this big. Yeah, and so our bounty hunter Matt Cardona carries that gun in the movie. So.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah,
Cool.
very cool little bounty hunter gun.
Well, I had one more question about Cardona.
Okay, yeah,
Oh, yeah, good point.
So you brought him up. He plays a bounty hunter.
correct.
And he's
yeah.
a big dude.
Yeah.
And he's got this little badass gun.
Yeah.
So tell me about his character a little bit.
Well,
And who he is, actually.
Yeah, so he wrestled in WWE for many years, like over a decade under the name Zack Ryder. He was U.S. champion, Intercontinental champion, Tag Team champion. He won the Intercontinental title and the Tag Team titles at WrestleMania. He since went on to be named like Independent Wrestler of the Year 2 years in a row, I think, by Pro Wrestling Illustrated. He, after leaving WWE, like has just really made a name for himself, and he just recently has had a bunch of matches with Paul Walter Hauser, the actor, and to the point that when promoting one of their matches after Paul Walter Hauser won an Emmy at the Emmys, he shouted out Matt Cardona in his Emmy acceptance speech as like a part of his takedown. For like, he was hyping up while winning his Emmy. And then they actually had a match for his Emmy, which Paul Walter Hauser did retain his Emmy Award in that match. I'm a former wrestler, and then like I said, some of the people I knew were dramatic, but some of the people I knew in wrestling have become great friends, like Matt Fitchett and Mike Outlaw, who are both in our film. And so I messaged Cardona at his booking email, and I said, hey, I used to be a wrestler. We have 2 local wrestlers in this film already. Like, what do you think about this? And he was like, I've never really been asked before. Like, sure, I'd love to do this,
Cool.
And then like he's been super game, posted our poster on his Facebook and like his Instagram, and he's just been super like everything we've asked him to do and everything we've thrown to him, he's been super excited about so far. And so his character, like when we were talking about bringing him into the film, like I pitched like a few ideas to Kurt about like how he could kind of like fit into the mix. And so the best thing I think that we landed on is like this really exciting thing is this Kurt's character, Doc, is this, sort of nefarious figure traveling through these towns. And so he's developed a bit of a reputation, and that, as he would, there's a big bounty on his head.
Okay.
So along with he's going through his thing, that's something I really like about our film is it's going to feel pretty expansive for our budget level, and it's the kind of thing that you mentioned earlier, where someone's going to watch and go, "Holy shit! How did they do this for this much money?" Because there's all these interweaving plots and all these things that are happening at the same time, and all just happening to coalesce in this river town. And so he's the bounty hunter coming in, searching for him, at the same time that he is getting entangled with this outlaw gang hunting for this gold. And so they sort of, you can imagine how that sort of boils over and mixes when like everyone's carrying guns and there are explosives and stuff, that there's going to, be some tension that happens there.
Yeah, and I wanted this, so kind of get back to spaghetti westerns for a minute. Spaghetti westerns kind of, sometimes they're like morally ambiguous, and you've got the anti-hero and whatever. I wanted this movie to be more anti than hero. I wanted to let the bad guys be really bad in this movie. And so most characters in this movie are just really just awful, evil people.
A lot of bad guys.
Yeah. And like if you watch like a Clint Eastwood movie and he's like, oh, the former reformed, outlaw is now, turning against him or whatever. You never actually have to come face to face with how bad Clint Eastwood was in his prior life, right? They sort of allude to it. So I wanted to make sure that you really know that everyone in this movie is a really, really bad person deep down. And the Cardona character is, he's kind of what passes for a good guy in the movie. He's this tough, kind of cynical guy, but, like when he kills people, he's killing them, because the law wants them dead.
Justice.
Right?
Yeah.
It's justified to him.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And there's like this sort of wisdom to him, right? So he's one of a couple of characters who aren't just thoroughly reprehensible. So.
Well, sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah, it'll pick me up. Yeah.
It sounds entertaining.
Definitely.
Yeah, glad to hear that.
Well, we wish you all the best.
Yeah, well, thanks so much.
Thanks for coming, guys.
No, thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for having us.
It's been good to get to know you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show.
That's been a real pleasure.
One more time, where can we hear about this, and what can we hear about?
Well, we have a Facebook group for Down the Long River, or you can go to downthelongriver.com, and that'll redirect you to our Indiegogo.
Yeah, just Indiegogo.com/down the long river. I think maybe there's some hyphens involved. You can find your way to it in many different paths. Our trailer is up on YouTube. There's also a behind-the-scenes interview where we will inevitably retread some of the same information we just talked about in this podcast. But you can, see some of the props we're talking about. See some of the, we have a lot of award-winning actors in this, from both in the theater space and the film space. So we highlight some of them. And I just encourage everyone to go to our Indiegogo, check it out, just read about the film, read about us. We had some more background on us. There's so many people, and James said this was going to happen, where there's a million people that we just didn't mention, and now I'm like, man, I wish that I could just rail off like a million names. Exactly, they're playing the music, but I have so many names to say. But yeah, there's just go to our Indiegogo and check it out, and then all the names are there, and there's so much, and there's so much that we actually still have yet to. Talking about the Indiegogo, there's things that we have yet to unveil. That there's exciting stuff.
Got a really cool cast announcement coming.
Correct. Right. Yeah. There's Cardona's not the only exciting name that we're announcing as the Indiegogo goes.
We'll be on the lookout.
You almost heard it here first.
Yeah, exactly. And for things that are out of my control, but it's it's very exciting. There's more to know. So just stay tuned to either the Facebook group, the Indiegogo, Instagram.com/downthelongriver. We have an Instagram where you can keep up with us there. You can follow me on Instagram, Harry Kolmer. I'm posting about this almost exclusively now. Yeah.
And I'm not on Instagram because I'm an old person, and so I'm on Facebook, like with all the other old people, so you can follow me there.
All right, well, like I said, we talked about a lot tonight.
We actually have talked about a lot tonight.
That's true.
I'm glad you brought that up.
I know. And we also talked about what we normally talk about. What's that, Brock?
What is? I believe it's the highs, the lows, and in between. Is it true?
It's true independent filmmaking.
There we go.
On the Indie Film Sucks podcast, brought to you by 88mm Productions. It's on all the places where stuff is. Whatever, Facebook, YouTube, blah blah.
Check us out, share us, get to know these guys, and let's really help them out and get this Down the Long River movie going.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good night.
Indie film sucks. Indie film sucks. It's the Indie Film Sucks podcast.